After the short introduction about public finance, we will now try to tackle the components of public finance. We will discuss the four components of public finance. We have the public revenue, which can be tax or non-tax revenue. We have the public expenditure, which can be productive or non-productive, or we can talk it at planned or unplanned. We also have to talk about public loans, which can also be either internal or external. And finally, we will talk about public administration, how government apply the fiscal policy. Let's tackle each component one by one. First, public revenue. Government must have funds or revenues to pay for their activities. Governments generate some revenues by charging the fees on the services they provide, such as entrance fees to national parks or tolls using a highway. First, we have personal income tax. That's the most basic. It's an important source of tax revenue in most industrialized countries. We impose on labor or activities that generate income, such as wages or salaries. But aside from personal income tax, government also get or collect tax from sales tax, estate tax, property tax, duties and tariffs on imports, and revenues from any type of public service. Sales and excise tax are also a major source of tax revenue. Many governments levy a sales tax on the purchase of certain items. Consumers usually pay a percentage of sales price as a tax. Excise tax are used by all levels of government. An excise tax is levied on a certain product such as alcohol, cigarettes, or gasoline. Another source of government revenue is capital tax. Capital includes items or facilities that generates profits such as factories, business machineries, and real estate. Some types of capital taxes are known as profit taxes. One kind of capital tax used by government is the corporate income tax. A property tax is a capital tax used by state and local governments. Property taxes are levied on such items as houses. The next item on the list is public expenditure. We know our government does budgets. Budget is a plan, what the government intends to do as expenditure for the next fiscal year. Expenditures are everything that a government spends money on, such as social programs, education, and infrastructure. Each year, national, provincial, and local governments create a budget to determine how much money they will spend during the upcoming year. The budget determines which public goods to produce, which spillovers to correct, and how much assistance to provide to disadvantaged people. The government spending takes two forms: exhaustive spending and transfer spending. Exhaustive spending refers to purchases made by the government for the production of public goods. Examples would be construct a new harbor, dam, a windmill project. The government buys and uses resources from the economy, such as labor and raw materials. Transfer spending is used when government transfer income to people to help them support themselves. There are two kinds of transfer. It can be cash or in kind. Cash transfers are cash payments such as social security checks, and welfare payments. In-kind transfers involve no cash payments, but instead transfer of goods and services to recipients. Examples of in-kind would include food coupons and Medicare. Our next component would be public loans. Here, we will discuss a government fiscal policy. A government fiscal policy is the way a government spends and taxes to influence the performance of an economy. When the government spends more than it receives, it runs into a deficit. Government finance deficits by borrowing money from domestic or from international organizations. Domestically, government can issue bonds for the people to invest. Internationally, government can borrow money from international organizations or from foreign countries. Government also does deficit spending. Deficit spending is spending funds obtained by borrowing instead of taxation. This can be helpful for the economy, but all that matters is where will the government spends. The burden of deficits is where the government will spend the money because it will surely affect the future generations. For example, if deficit spending is due to construction of new schools, dams, or public utilities, this would generate and support employment, and surely it will generate revenue in the future. When unemployment is high, government can take projects and use workers who would otherwise be idle. The economy will then expand because more money is being pumped into it. However, deficit can also harm the economy. When unemployment is low, a deficit may result in rising prices or inflation. The additional government spending creates more competition for scarce workers and resources, and thus inflates wages and prices. On to our final component, which is public administration. Here, we try to focus the major functions of the government in public finance. We have the allocation function, the distribution function, and the stabilization function. First is the allocation function. The government should allocate total resources between private goods and social goods. Government should choose the mix of social goods. For example, how many hospitals, how many schools to build, how many doctors, how many teachers, engineers to finance. Taxation and spending are major instruments. It is also important for the government to do non-fiscal regulatory instruments like taxing imported goods. Government has to perform functions such as maintaining law and order, defense against foreign attacks, providing healthcare, education, building infrastructure. The performance of these functions requires large-scale expenditure, and it is important to allocate the expenditure efficiently. This allocation function studies how to allocate public expenditure most efficiently to reap maximum benefits with the available public wealth. The next function is the distribution function. There are large disparities of income and wealth in every country. These income inequalities plague society and increase crime rate. The distribution function is to lessen these inequalities as much as possible through redistribution of income and wealth. The distribution of income and wealth should be between various classes. Taxes and subsidies are major tools. Under the function, taxes are used to distribute resources between private and public ones. There are three ways to achieve distribution. First, a tax transfer scheme or using progressive taxing, charging higher tax from the rich and giving subsidies to the low income. Second, progressive taxes can be used to finance public services such as affordable housing, healthcare, and education. A higher tax can be applied to luxury goods that are purchased by the high-income group people. The last function of the public administration is the stabilization function. Every economy goes through periods of booms and depression, and these periods cause instability in an economy. The objective of stabilization function is to eliminate or try to tone down the effects of economic cycles. Government can use policies to influence unemployment, price level, and output. Government can use deficit budgeting policies during times of depression. Government can also use surplus budgeting policies during the time of boom.